This committee will come to order. Would the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Outman.
Here.
Representatives Alexander.
Here.
Carra.
Here.
Brock.
Present.
Kuntz.
Present.
Neyer.
Here.
Preston.
Here.
Bonak.
Here.
Frisbee.
Here.
Wertz. Here. Herzberg. Hope. Here. Kolazar.
Here.
Andrews.
Here.
Grant.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Wilson. Mr. Chair, you have 16 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Vice Chair Alexander moves to adopt the minutes of the November 4th meeting. There being no objection, the minutes are adopted. So first up today, we have some votes on bills that we heard quite some time ago. Rep. Neyer, would you like to give just a little refresher on what these bills do and also what's included in the substitutes?
Yeah, this is tax credits that are developed for sustainable aviation fuel and encouraging the production of it here in the state for our corn growers. The first substitute is merely just language or a date change there from January 25th to 26th. Also requiring the people that are taking the tax credit to provide clear evidence that SAF is reducing greenhouse emissions. And the third change would be a clear sunset of 10 years to ensure the adequate and timely review of this program.
Thank you, Representative. Rep. Miller, do you have a couple of
Yes.
comments?
I just wanted to make a few comments. I supported these bills last session, and I believe this is a step forward and an opportunity for farmers to expand their production, and it is sustainable aviation fuel, which could lead to growth in this emerging market, and I applaud Rep. Neyer for bringing these forward, and I will vote yes, I will support this.
Thank you, Representative. Before we get to the voting, I will read in a few cards. First up, not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Adam Majestic, Detroit Regional Chamber. Not wishing to speak, but available for questions, supporting the bill, Matt Smigo, Michigan Corn Growers Association. Again, not wishing to speak, supporting the bills, Joshua Scramlin, Michigan Farm Bureau. And lastly, not wishing to speak, supporting the bills, Chase from Clean Fields, Michigan. All right. With that, Rep. Alexander makes a motion to adopt the substitute H2 for House Bill 4424. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Outman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander.
Yes.
Carra.
No.
Brock.
Yay.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Neyer.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Bonak.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Herzberg. Hope.
Yes.
Kolazar.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 1 nay, 0 pass. The substitute is adopted.
Rep. Neyer moves to report House Bill 4424 with recommendation as substitute H2. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Outman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander.
Yes.
Carra.
No.
Brock.
Yay.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Neyer. Neyer.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Bonak.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Herzberg. Hope.
Yes.
Kolazar.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 1 nay, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
House Bill 4424 is reported with recommendation as substitute H2. Representative Neyer makes a motion to adopt the substitute H4 for House Bill 4425. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Outman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander.
Yes.
Carra.
No.
Brock.
Yay.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Neyer.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Bonak.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Herzberg. Hope.
Yes.
Kolazar.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 1 nay, 0 pass. The substitute is adopted.
Rep. Neyer moves to report House Bill 4425 with recommendation as substitute H4. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Outman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander.
Yes.
Carra.
No.
Bruck.
Yay.
Kuntz.
Aye.
Neyer.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Bonet.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Hersberg. Hope.
Yes.
Colazar.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 1 nay, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
House Bill 4425 is reported with recommendation as substitute H4. Next up on the agenda, we have Senate Bill 269. Do we have somebody from Senator Camilleri's office? Perfect. Come on up and begin whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee for taking action on this legislation today. My name is Tyler Morava. I'm with Senator Camilleri's office. He unfortunately could not be here today, but wanted to make sure that I passed along his remarks in support of this legislation. So Senate Bill 269 would amend the Channeling Act within Michigan's Aeronautics Code and streamline how federal funds are distributed to Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport, more commonly known as DTW. So under this current law, funds awarded by the Federal Aviation Administration would first have to go through MDOT before the funds are released to commercial service airports located throughout our state. What this bill would do, Senate Bill 269, is cut through red tape and reduce needless bureaucracy by allowing these funds to go directly to DTW as opposed to first needing to be channeled through a State Department. In 2021, we saw another state, Illinois, pass legislation which matches this one, which would make this exact change to the Channeling Act that they had in their state. And in the aftermath of CARES Act funding, it took them up to 6 months for airports in Illinois to receive these funds. In other states without these barriers, these funds were received in a matter of days. So not only would this change increase efficiency, but it would also bring more transparency to how federal dollars are allocated and also spent. For our state's largest airport and transportation hub, the need for this change is very clear. In 2024, DTW saw nearly 33 million passengers arrive or depart its terminals, which is a 4.8% increase from the previous year. We're talking about an increase of millions of passengers with no signs of slowing down at all. With growing traffic and a demand for more flights in and out of our state's flagship commercial airport, this bill is necessary to ensure that DTW is receiving federal dollars they've been awarded in a timely manner. This is common sense legislation. It passed unanimously on the Senate floor, and I hope that we can receive the same broad support in the House as well. Thank you again for taking up this legislation, and we will now take any questions that the committee members may have.
Perfect. Now, are your guests going to be testifying as well? These folks? And could you, before you begin, could you introduce yourself just quickly to the committee?
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Amber Hunt. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Detroit Metro Airport, and alongside me is...
Scott Roberts, Director of Capital Planning.
And so to add on to these comments, just to put it into into broad terms, right now we have 20 open grants. And so really what happens on a tactical level is that we submit the grants to MDOT. MDOT does not make any determination on these grants. They simply put them into a system, and then they route this through the Treasury Department to get funding. Once that funding is, awarded from the FAA, it goes back through the Treasury Department, and then the funding comes to us. So really, the being part of the State Aeronautics Fund, or not Aeronautics Fund, the Aeronautics Group, the MDOT, is just a step in the process. There's, again, no decision making, and it causes a lot of undue havoc in the Treasury Department, because every time that there's a new grant that we get awarded, they have to go through their own internal processes to get funding, a funding channel to us. It's very, very administrative, and so multiple states don't have this act, and during CARES and as COVID was happening, and even generally, it took us more than 6 months to get funding, and it was detrimental to us. It's just the way that we're structured financially. We don't have a lot of days of cash on hand, so it was not great. Normally, our construction season, so our fiscal year is December to December. We restructured ourselves to go around our construction season since we are heavy construction. And so what will happen is we'll have tens of millions of dollars that we've paid to our construction companies that now we are having to wait and float for the FAA and MDOT to go ahead and get that money back to us. And it's tens of millions. So that's some of the reason why we would like to have a direct line to the FAA so that we can get that funding faster, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Sir, did you have anything to add to that?
I guess just a couple of things. One is our moving to get out of the Channeling Act has nothing to do with the effort from MDOT Aeronautics. We have a great partnership with them. We work well with them. It's a matter of timing. And one of our biggest issues is during construction season, we'll see a large placement of concrete for taxiway and runway projects late July through August. So the contractor invoice is coming to us probably sometime in September or a little after. That is right at the end of the fiscal year for the state. They stop processing the grant reimbursements for several months while they go through their year-end closeout. So we have invoices in excess of $10 million on these projects that are sitting for a number of months. Through nobody's fault, it's just timing. And if we could eliminate that step, that timing, it would help us as we fund these large projects.
Sure. Well, thank you for adding that. We do have some questions from members. We'll start with Representative Frisbee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your testimony. A couple of questions. Is there any fees, administrative fees, that the state of Michigan pulls out of there at all?
No.
All right. So they obviously are making a little interest. Do you get that? If it's tens of millions of dollars just sitting in a savings account somewhere, it's going to make a little bit of interest. Is that given to you?
No.
All right. And why not for other airports? I think this is directed at you. Is this a federal law, a state law? I mean, there's plenty of airports that are dealing with some of the same issues. So why not? Why wouldn't we include more than DTW? And it's not a slam on DTW. I use it myself, but I use other airports as well.
So the Channeling Act is great for other regional airports, right? It really assists them in receiving these FAA funds. But for DTW, that need isn't really there. And so, in the future, if there's other airports that also wish to go another route, not have to use the Channeling Act, we can certainly look at that. But for now, we just wanted to start with DTW.
Would you be open to an amendment that would say essentially that if an airport wants to opt out of the Channeling Act, they can?
It's certainly a conversation that could happen.
Thank you.
Representative Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Representative Frisbee, for asking some of my questions. Why is there a channeling here in Michigan? Is that's just a Michigan idea, where it's channeled? Those federal FAA funds are channeled?
No. So this was part of the State Aeronautics Act back in the 40s. So when the Aeronautics Act was put in, this Channeling Act was there. I don't know if anybody really knows why it was there, but there's no overarching reason why. For example, the state of Texas doesn't have this. So it's just state by state. I'm not quite sure why.
So it's a federal program that was adopted by various states?
I believe it was a state program that was adopted by various states. I don't think that this was a federal program.
Okay. And why, what is it doing to help airports? You folks stated that all they're doing is getting the money and then giving it to you after they analyze it, but you mentioned that it assists these smaller airports in getting it. So what does it do?
Sure. So for smaller airports, so for example, when we have to put in grant information, it's pretty detailed and it has to go into a very specific program. It's called Program Wise that gets fed through the FAA. So a lot of the smaller airports, like the GA airports out there, they don't have a big staff like we do to put that information actually in the system. For example, I'll choose Metatol just because it's a small airport close to us. It's in Plymouth. There's one gentleman who runs the entire airport. So on top of his daily duties of mowing and keeping the runway clean and all the other pieces, he'd then have to turn around and have to try to manage a grant program. So for us, we're about to embark on, we've got multiple grants. We're redoing the bathrooms. So if you've traveled through the airport, we're redoing all the bathrooms. We have a giant road project going through. We're rehabilitating the tunnels where you drive underneath some of our crosswinds runways. We're about to embark on a $250 million taxiway and runway redo, full depth reconstruction. So we've got these invoices going back and forth all the time. So on a much smaller scale, a lot of smaller airports, they just don't have the time or staff to dedicate to doing all of this work is really how.
So it's not just correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just a flow through. MDOT Aeronautics Division is also helping with the grant process for the airports. But you as a larger airport are forced essentially to submit your grants through Aeronautics Division to MDOT, and then it goes to the FAA, then it comes back to them, and then it comes to you.
Correct. And again, because the state doesn't, approve anything, so for when we're doing our invoicing, they don't look through our invoices saying, oh, you're missing this or missing that. They just simply do the administrative task of putting that information in the system.
Okay, I appreciate that. That does help me. And again, I'll echo Representative Frisbee's. I would like to see an amendment that gives an opt-out for other regional airports that could possibly be in your situation, but not as large as you. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We'll move on now to Rep. Carra. Still have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And for our guests from DTW, quick question for you. Do you anticipate that more federal funds will end up coming our way as a process of this, or that it just simply will speed up the process?
It'll simply speed up the process.
Okay, thank you.
Rep. Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hard question to quantify, but what is your expected reduction in waiting time? Are we talking days or months?
Months.
Months.
Months. So for example, when COVID was happening for Dallas-Fort Worth, they got the very first CARES Act. It was the longest time that they took was 2 weeks. For us, it was 8 months. So.
Well, that's an exception. Let's not talk about COVID. Let's do regular government, if there is such a thing.
It's weeks. So for.
If there is, admittedly.
Of course. So for regular grants, it's weeks.
Okay.
At most weeks. What we've heard is usually 5 to 10 business days, but for us, it's months.
Okay. We went from weeks to months. So you're going to save months, is what I'm hearing.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Rep. Miller.
Great minds think alike. My question was asked. I just wanted more of a detail on what was a qualified airport, but.
So qualified airport in the state aeronautics code is any airport that has over 10,000 enplaned passengers. And that's when the code was set up, we were the only airport, we still are, the only airport that has more than 10 million enplaned passengers.
Representative Wertz.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I flew a week and a half ago out of your airport and flew into New York City, and let me tell you, I was never so glad to fly back. Your airport's clean. You have nice people, and I was treated very well there, not so well in the airport in New York City. So thank you for that, and keep up the good work. My question is, what department is currently processing these grants? So when you're talking about the backlog, where's that at the state?
So that's the MDOT Aeronautics Group. And again, they oversee over 230 airports. So, we're just one of many, and we're obviously the bulk of their, the paperwork that they have to deal with. But yeah, it's through MDOT Aeronautics, and then it goes through the Treasury Department. The actual
Okay.
payments themselves.
Okay, and then when you talk about, so our fiscal year is October 1 to September 30th in the state of Michigan. What is the federal fiscal year?
I believe it's the same.
Yeah.
It is the same? Okay, all right. So there's not really anything changing other than it just goes directly to you guys?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
If I may, just for context, this morning we are going to be sending 20 requests for reimbursement to the state for various grants, totaling about $20 million spent. The grant portion is $16.8 million. So, at this time of the year, at the end of construction, we're now, loading them up with 20 invoices that if we could just submit through ProjectWise, that would save them the time for processing this.
And to add on to that, if I could, the invoices aren't just one line, for $5 million. It's, dockets of construction invoices with hundreds and hundreds of lines, so just to put in perspective.
Can I ask one more question on that, follow up that? So do you submit your grants quarterly? And in my previous position, I submitted everything quarterly to DNR. So it's ongoing.
Constantly.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Members, any more additional questions for these folks? Seeing none, you guys are off the hook. Okay. Thank you for your testimony. I have one card to read in real quickly. Not wishing to speak, neutral on the bill. Mac Albach from NDOT. With that, I move to report Senate Bill 269 with recommendation. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Outman,
Yes.
Representatives Alexander,
Yes.
Carra,
Yes.
Brock,
Yay with the tentative amendment on the floor.
Kuntz,
Aye.
Neyer,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Bonet,
Yes.
Frisbee,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes.
Hersberg, Hope, Colazar,
Yes.
Andrews,
Yes.
Grant,
I'm going to pass right now, hoping to see an amendment so that I can support it.
Miller,
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 1 pass. The motion prevails.
Senate Bill 269 is reported with recommendation. We're going to switch things up real quick just so we have adequate time. We'll go to Senate Bill 532. Do we have somebody from Senator Cherry's office? Perfect. The floor is yours whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Nick Haas. I'm Senator Cherry's legislative director. Much like Senator Camilleri, Senator Cherry is also at a prior commitment. Well, he's in the Appropriations Committee right now, so unable to be here before you today. But he appreciates you taking the time to take up this legislation. The bill before you would amend the Michigan Vehicle Code to allow active duty military members to request a special registration plate for their vehicle in the same manner that currently former military members, National Guard members, and members of the Armed Forces Reserve can request special registration plates with a vignette for the branch of which they had served or are currently serving. In Michigan, we take pride in our constituents who have devoted their lives to service, especially those willing to make the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our nation. According to the Department of Defense, Michigan is home to more than 4,500 active duty service members. By permitting those active duty members to request special plates, those constituents are then enabled to share pride in their service in a way that we feel is dignified. That's the legislation. Open to any questions that you may have.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. Good bill. Members, do we have any questions for Nick while he's up here? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Oh, let me back up. Representative Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that catch. Quick question on the verification currently you have to have a DD-214, which verifies that you served 180 days consecutive active duty service. How are you going to verify this with the License Bureau?
That's a good question. That's not something that had come up in the course of us drafting the legislation. I will say that the application does include permission from the applicant's unit commander when endorsing the application. It's a similar provision that was adopted in Montana over for the course of applying through to the department and having it verified that the member is eligible. I think it's something that we can take back to the department as well, as something that potentially that they look over in the course of the application. I'm not sure if they're here today or not, could speak on that in terms of verifying the.
You said that's the current in there, that they would have to have the verification from the unit commander.
Yes,
that
yes.
would verify
Yep, that
it.
is currently in the language right now.
Okay, it's
Yep.
not a either or, that's a.
Yep, it's a.
That is a
it's part of the
requirement.
Yep.
Okay, and so I guess my worry, and the reason I ask this question is, someone joins the military, they don't make it through basic training, and then all of a sudden, I'm a veteran, I want the plate. They don't have a DD-14 that states that they're served 180 days. I just want to make sure there's not some sort of stolen valor potential in this bill.
Absolutely.
For the license plates, and I would see that as such. And then for the active duty, I guess that would be the same, because we do have the active duty folks. This is only for the actual military personnel, correct? National Guard, Reserve, Air Force.
Yes.
Et cetera, not
That's-
auxiliaries
That was
and
the
such.
intent in the way that the bill was written, correct?
Okay. Current branches of the
Yes.
service. Okay. Thank you.
Rep Frisbee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question along the lines of Brooke. We seem to be hitting the same points. What happens if an active military member is dishonorably discharged? Is it immediately revoked?
That's a good question. In the manner in which the current members retired members can get the plate, they have to have been honorably discharged. Our intent would also be that someone, if they were honorably discharged, they wouldn't. So, I see what you mean by having to return the plate if they were honorably discharged. The bill, I do not believe, speaks to that in its current form.
And maybe one of you could answer that. Is there an obligation of a military member to give up all rights of military claim on dishonorable discharge?
Well, I can speak to license plates that you do have to re-verify your service record when you get your place renewed.
Thanks.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologize.
No, thank you, Rep. Any other questions for Nick while he's up here? Rep Wertz.
Thank you. Was this requested by someone or a constituent, or where did this idea come from, I guess?
It was actually just a constituent from the 27th Senate District who came to us. I'm not sure if this constituent has served or if he's just very passionate about military members, and he thought, he's an attorney and saw a flaw in the current statute where it was only former members or members of the National Guard or the Reserve Forces that were able to get these plates, and he felt that it was unfair that active duty military members in Michigan didn't have the same ability to do so.
Yeah, I actually wasn't aware that current military members weren't eligible as well.
We brought that to the Department of State, and they were also surprised that we were the first ones to ever ask them the question about why that was the case. Yeah,
for sure. Don't see any further questions. Nick, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm going to read a quick card in before we move on. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Nick Andreary from Department of State. Thank you, Nick. Okay. Finally, we're going to end today with Rep. Carra. Are you ready to testify on your bills? House Bill 5175 and 76? Yes. Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. We're here today on House Bills 5175 and 5176. It is design, build, maintain. When I first came to the legislature, I had heard, and if you'll just think back, when you think about, when we talk about roads and the quality of them, is it about how much money we have for them, or is it about the process? And if you think for a second, what is a conversation consistently about? It's about how do we get the money, how much money do we have, where does it come from, where do we maybe not have money because we took money to put it towards the roads. It's about the dollars and cents. And I think that we would be wise to look beyond the dollars and cents, have that conversation too, absolutely, but look into the process by which we build the roads. As it is currently, we have a process where companies build a road and then there's a difficult to enforce warranty, and they don't have as much accountability as I believe that they should have. And then government ends up playing a very heavy role in the maintenance of the road ongoing. So what Design, Build, Maintain largely proposes, which is an interesting middle ground because I don't like government involved in much of anything, as you guys are well aware. But what this process would be is government, instead of managing and making the market decisions, would be playing an oversight role, and the private sector would have more responsibility that they assume for the day in and day out, not just building the road, but how are we going to do it cost effectively for the longevity of the road, and not just the upfront cost for these big reconstruction projects. Milton Friedman is a well-known economist. He suggests that the free market does things at half the cost of government. Again, I'm not arguing for government to be out of the process in the roads altogether, just simply for them to play more of an oversight role as opposed to the managing of the quality of the roads for the longevity. So that's the general concept of design, build, maintain, and I'll turn it over to Representative Alexander.
And thank you very much for allowing me to testify as well. Steve first came to me with this idea, and I thought it was intriguing. It's something that hasn't been tackled before. I'm a boots on the ground type person. I was a drain commissioner before this, and I've seen a lot of projects go south over the years because we always give it out to the cheapest bidder. And fortunately, as a drain commissioner, I wasn't obligated to take the cheapest bid. Sometimes I knew the contractors, and I knew their backgrounds, and it got me into trouble with the different departments. So I would always try to find somebody, a good qualifying bid. And House Bill 5176 complements House Bill 5175 without overlapping it. For projects that do not use long-term design, building, operate, maintain contracts, this bill ensures there's a strong practical tool in place to protect the public investment. The goal is simple. When we make a major investment in roads, we should expect it to perform as its intended lifespan. The legislation is not about assigning blame or shifting unreasonable risk. It does not require contractors to cover damage from declared disasters or catastrophic events. It's about aligning our incentives so that quality, durability, and long-term performance matter. When pavement fails earlier than expected, it forces us to redirect funding away from other priorities, local roads, bridges, and safety improvements, just to fix the same stretch of road again. Over time, that cycle is one reason Michigan struggles to keep pace with surrounding states. At its core, House Bill 5176 is a common sense step towards better roads, smarter spending, and a greater confidence that taxpayers are getting the full value of their money. I expect it's going to get some opposition, and I just remind everybody that John Maxwell stated that all progress must begin with change.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else to add? No?
That's good.
Well, I'll just start by thanking you, Rep. Carra. I know you've been working on this concept for a long time now, so we appreciate your efforts on this. I guess I'll start with a couple of quick questions. Number one, you'd mentioned cost savings, you'd mentioned accountability throughout your testimony. Does this bill anticipate overall cost savings to the state, or is the goal primarily accountability rather than cost reduction?
I'd say it's both cost reduction and accountability in the long run. What I would anticipate is private sector companies who have a long-term responsibility to maintain a road for a decade or longer, based on what the contract is with the road agency, is going to want to do a good quality job up front and then make good cost-effective preventive care measures as they go. So the upfront cost could be higher, but in the long run, it should be a cost reduction.
Sure. And when you were working on this legislation, are you aware of any other state that that uses this concept of design, build, maintain? I've certainly heard a lot about design, build over the years, but this design, build, operate, maintain are we in uncharted territories here, or?
There are examples of design, build, maintain throughout the nation, but for a full process for the entire state, I am unaware of a state that has it for all of their reconstruction processes, but they do it in project to project, case by case basis.
Sure. And I guess last question for you, why was the 10-year period chosen? Is that tied to typical failure windows or warranty cycles, or were there some other method to that madness?
I wanted to leave latitude to the road agency to negotiate those contracts. I'd say 10 years, that's the minimum. So if a road agency, whether MDOT, which would be required for their big projects to do design, build, maintain, or local road agencies may. So if a local road agency doesn't want to use design, build, maintain, they don't have to. But if they do, it could be a 10-year contract. They might negotiate a 15, 20-year contract. For a bridge, they might want to look at longer years, but I didn't specify for bridges to be longer. It's just you would imagine for bridges and the amount of upfront cost that goes into a bridge, you might have a longer window.
Sure, sure. Members, do we have any other questions? Representative Bruck?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity again. Question with like rural railroad crossings, is that, I know there's a portion that's paid for by the county or by the townships, et cetera. Does the railroads have any play in this particular, or would they be above that threshold? Or?
So the railroads are actually federal, but MDOT has a division that works directly with the railroads, but everything that's federal. So the county is not responsible for railroads.
Okay. All right, thank you.
The crossings are all federal.
Rep. Frisbee, you have a question?
Thanks, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're on the right track. I think this is a good step. I think there's some definitions in these that really need some clamping down. And one would be the bonding process and who holds the bond, and how do you prevent failure of a bond process if it's not maintained, somebody goes defunct. So I think that's one of my concerns. And then out of their control was another one. Of who's going to determine that? What are some examples of that you see? And again, I think if you're going to, potentially this is going to cost a lot more on the upfront side, less on the down, the back side. It'll extend the life. I get what you're doing. But with that out of their control, that opens up a big can of worms. And I think that would need to be really closely defined so that people aren't wondering what does that mean in the end. Because I think if loosely defined terms prevent private organizations from going, yeah, we're not exposing ourselves to that. Even though I think you've got a good idea here, I think we need to work on those things just a little bit.
Let me know if you have anything to add. Yeah, so first on the language, I'd be happy to look into that language we have about what's out of their control. So keep in touch with me on that.
Right.
As it relates to the bonding, what I'll say out of the gate is these contracts that are negotiated, what I believe would be prudent is to not have a situation like we had with I-75 where the banks get involved and there's interest and added costs because the bank is involved. If the upfront cost will just make up a number, or $1.25 million for year one, I would think that the contract should look at paying out very close to that $1.25 million year one, and then dropping down for preventative care costs throughout the way from there, so that the companies don't have to get the banks involved and have that overhead. So that would be my recommendation in that circumstance. By the point where, say, year 4, the contract says they're supposed to have a PACER rating of 8 or higher for the road and not have potholes of a certain size, and the quality of the road's deteriorated to where there's a breach of contract, well, by that point, they wouldn't get paid for years 5 through 10. because they're not in compliance, and so they're not going to get paid more, and then the agency's going to have to go a different direction. So.
Be really careful with that 8. That's a really hard number to maintain in Michigan. I don't care how well you build it.
And it's that's not in the bill. That's just however they.
Those are things you got to be really worried about.
Yes.
And very clearly defined.
And that would be up to the road agency to deliberate that contract with them. Did you have something to add, Representative Alexander?
I'm good. That's good.
Okay.
Representative Bonack.
Thank you for your testimony. I just want to get some clarification. What sort of responsibility or liability does a contracting company have at present if, let's say, a segment of road goes south?
Yeah, so there's warranties for 5 years currently that are very difficult to enforce. So oftentimes they have responsibility, but they kind of get off the hook in many circumstances. So this would be not simply a warranty perspective, but they have the responsibility, the expectation, they're going to make good on the standards that they said that they would in the contract with the road agency. So much easier to enforce, much more accountability for the companies involved.
Thank you.
Representative Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry I'm late. Something popped in. How would the contractor be selected in the process? And would the negotiations take place before, during, and after the award?
So that would be up to the road agency to determine the contract, and so they'll get bids and determine what route they go.
But is it, because now we're not looking at price, we're looking at value. So you may cost more, but you give a higher warranty. I mean, are we adding a variable to it? This is where I'm getting gray.
Well, so my understanding from the way that it's written currently, right? So instead of it just being the lowest bid automatically wins, a road agency that might say, hey, we've seen this company do work in the state of Michigan before, and they have good quality results. They haven't defaulted on any of their contracts. They might go with something that's higher than the lowest bid. They would have that discretion. That is something that in the process is something that should be deliberated. Is that best, or would it be more logical just to say, hey, we're going with the lowest bidder? Because we don't, the potential con would be if you have a preferred company that is not actually the best company, but is part of the good old boys club. So that's the pro and con there.
Mr. Chair, is MDOT going to testify on this? Because I'd like to talk about that.
I don't believe so. I was hoping they would, but I don't believe that they are scheduled to testify.
All right, because I do think value is part of road bidding assignments now. I think you can come in and say, it's going to cost more, but I'll give you this. But I don't have enough details to. Okay. Sarah, would you feel comfortable talking about that? After. Thank you.
And I will say, Representative, I do hope to get MDOT in here to testify on this at some point. No, sir. Any other questions for the bill sponsors while they're up there? Oh, yeah. Rep. Wertz, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I got 2 questions. One, how do private contractors feel about this bill? Have you spoke with them that are significantly involved in the major construction projects around the state? Are they favorable to this, or what's their opinion?
Is anybody else testifying, Mr. Chair? I think MIDA might be testifying, are they? Yeah, MIDA will testify. That might be a good question to ask them. I will probably ask them a question as well. If you want me to answer now, I can. Do you still want me to answer, or do you want to leave that for them?
Let's ask them. Thank you.
And I do know, I just want to add one thing. I do recognize that there are specifications that exist. Sometimes, depending on the soil types, depending on what you run into in the field, there's always change orders. I found a couple of bridges buried 5 feet below the surface of the ground, and that, change orders will happen. And we recognize that. But sometimes common sense is overlooked in a lot of our specifications, and when something comes south in the field, something goes awry in the field, then adjustments have to be made. And oftentimes the contractor has a better solution than the bureaucrat. Fair statement? So, thank you.
Okay, well, and then that, a part of what you're saying maybe is somewhat of an answer, but my second question is, what happens if you have weight restrictions that are violated on a road. So it's not necessarily the contractor put the road down, but then the weight, and when those weight restrictions are put on, for example, on county roads, is determined by each county. But then, I mean, for example, I travel back and forth, so do you, Representative I-69. I don't particularly drive in the southbound right lane because it's so terrible because of the weight of the semi-trucks. I drive in the left lane, and unless someone wants to pass me. But, so my point is, sometimes it's not necessarily that the road was, and that road, I drove that road 25 years ago, driving back to MSU after I was married, so that road needs upgraded. It's not necessarily that it was bad manufacturing, but weight over time has a larger impact on the road than the construction of which it was created. So how do you balance that?
I would say that would be part of the process that the road agency would go through with the company to deliberate. If it is a road like I-69 with heavier vehicles traveling, they're maybe going to want to lay the road a little bit deeper, do it a different way out of the gate. If it's a secondary road in the country that doesn't see as much heavy traffic, they might go a different route. But that all is just part of what would get negotiated through the contract process in terms of what are the expectations, knowing, you know, the travel, you know, records from the past, and making the decision in terms of how they lay the road moving forward. It's part of the contract.
I guess my point in this, and where I'm really concerned in my community where we have large amounts of solar and battery operations come in, those roads were built not based on the weight load that now is coming into our community. And so who's liable for that? In my opinion, it should be the companies bringing the heavy equipment and the weight of those projects, and not put that back on the responsibility of the person that built that road. So how do we ensure protection of that?
And there is a bonding process for overweight and heavy loads from the trucks. The truck drivers themselves apply for that through the weight restriction. So a different division.
Any other questions for the bill sponsors? Seeing none, thank you both for your testimony. We do have some other folks wishing to testify. We have wishing to speak opposing the bill, Lance Bunimi from MIDA. We have wishing to speak opposing the bills, Steve from Michigan Concrete Association, and we have wishing to speak and opposing the bill, Brett Stanton from the Asphalt Paving Association. And you guys can begin whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Lance Benonimi. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association, or more commonly known as MIDA. We represent about 500 companies across the state that build our roads, bridges, underground water and sewers, all types of infrastructure in every corner of Michigan. I'm here today to voice our concerns in opposition to House Bills 5175 and 5176. I appreciate the bill sponsors' connection with us over the years on this legislation. Apologize that we can't come to an agreement, but I do appreciate his willingness to listen to our concerns throughout the couple of years that he's been talking about this. We believe that design, build, operate, preserve, and maintain is a valuable project delivery method when used selectively. However, we believe that mandating it for every reconstruction and every rehabilitation project will lead to limited competition, increased costs, and could put Michigan contractors out of business. Michigan transportation system varies and is complex throughout the different areas of the state. These assets vary dramatically in scale, complexity, risk, and overall maintenance costs. Requiring any delivery method exclusively removes the flexibility road agencies have and need to select the most cost-effective delivery method for each construction project. This type of delivery method comes with complex procurement processes, extensive legal review, and long-term performance monitoring and enforcement, which would lead to increased administrative costs, delays in project delivery, and reducing the number of projects that can be funded with existing dollars. We believe that this model can work for large, complex, high-value transportation assets, but is an overkill for short road segments or low-risk bridge repairs. In addition, there are likely only a handful of Michigan contractors who would be able to enter into these complex contracts with the state. That small handful will have their bonding capacity eaten up very quickly and will render them unable to perform projects in the future. This limiting competition even further and likely increasing costs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Steve Walkus with the Michigan Concrete Association. Our members, which number almost 200 companies across the state, provide concrete and concrete construction services to lots of different agencies and partners and private owners as well. So we represent specifically the concrete construction side of the industry. I would echo what Lance had to say. We have a lot of members actually that overlap with his association as well. A lot of our members that do public road construction. So our experience and information that we've gleaned from our membership is that MDOT has a successful warranty program, varying anywhere from 2 to 5 years, over a dozen types of warranted products or projects that they do, depending on the fixed type. And they are very successful in administering that warranty program, second only to, I believe, the state of Florida in the country as far as number of warranties currently that have been completed or are under contract still. So Michigan is a leader in the country when it comes to warranties up to 5 years. Well, in talking with a lot of our members who have to go out and secure bonds from surety companies for these types of projects that require a warranty or another innovative financing type of project, they have to have funding partners because they can't do the work for free if they're not getting paid the full amount right away, is that their bonding capacity is affected by these types of projects of the design, build, finance, operate, maintain type of scenario. MDOT has a lot of flexibility when it comes to contracting types. They do lots of various innovative contracting methods already and have done some of this in the past, and it does work for certain large, unique projects where it does make sense. So they already have the flexibility to do this type of contracting method, and they already use warranties on a lot of different projects. So I will yield my remaining time to my partner here from the asphalt industry.
All right. Thank you, Chair Outman and the rest of the committee for the opportunity here to testify in opposition of this bill. As it was mentioned, I should mention, Brett Stanton with the Asphalt Pavement Association of Michigan. As mentioned during the testimony from the bill sponsor, each project is different. Therefore, allowing for the owner to decide on how the project will be designed, built, and maintained over time is what we currently do. This additional financing on top of that, to Lance's point, will only increase costs. Whether or not the value actually comes from that increased cost will remain to be seen. So having this particular project delivery tool in the toolbox is a good thing, but having it being required on every project is something that I don't think is good for the state. I mentioned before during testimony in front of this committee that MDOT has some of the toughest specifications across the country from what I've seen in my travels and worked in other states. And those specifications do help ensure that the taxpayer is getting the quality material that they are asking for. As I drive around the state, I'm not seeing these major failures, and the taxpayer is left holding the bucket for that. So I don't know. It's I guess I'm interested in learning more about the premise of this, but I think as currently it's not good for the state. So with that, anybody has anything else?
So at least from your guys' opinion, you're skeptical of the cost savings.
Yes, I don't have the data, but I would guess MDOT may have the data. Typically, you see in a warranty situation, the price goes up because you're transferring the risk from the owner to the contractor, and a number of things. The risk is, there's a lot of variables that are out of control of the contractor. So in this bill, it does talk about negotiating, the design, kind of putting that into the contractor's hand. That's a good thing in this situation. Design build projects often see the contractor who's responsible for it handle the design, get to select the materials, those things. That's a positive thing. To Rep. Wertz's point, there's big unknown there. If traffic levels increase, say there's a new battery plant that comes in during, the I guess use phase of this project, who's on the hook for that? There's a lot of things. There's weather, there's underlying soil conditions. We can only go down so far. There's things that happen below. There's drainage issues, stuff like that. There was some mine paid to disasters, which is, I think, a good thing as well. But there's also what happens when there's a disaster adjacent to this project, and the cleanup crews come through there with heavy trucks and everything like that that can damage the pavement. So there's a number of things that are out of the contractor's hands, and therefore that risk then gets bid into the project, therefore you pay for it one way or the other, whether you use it or not.
Sure, and that makes sense. I mean, I would expect bids to increase proportionally to that added responsibility. But my question is, in the long term for the taxpayer, you're still skeptical of the cost savings.
I guess I fail to see where our pavements are not performing. We have a very good system in place. I think the one big hurdle right now is the lack of funding. We're not able to maintain the project at the time it needs to be maintained. And once you roll past a year or two beyond that, Lance has showed many slides where you see, performance curve, they start to go like that, and then they drop down very drastically. So that's, I think, where we're falling short. It's not having the money to fix it when it's time to fix it.
And then I guess I'll ask one more, and then I'll turn it over to other members for questions. But if we could just hone in on bonding requirements and accessibility. You'd mentioned repeatedly throughout your testimony the concern about small contractors and the and would bonding requirements under design, build, maintain, make it harder for smaller firms to compete. Is that a fair assessment of your guys' concerns?
Yeah, I think in terms of small contractors, I don't think it's just the bonding capacity that they would be limited in. It's, the legal, we've come up with a few scenarios already in the questions through committee on this legislation to talk about some of the legal battles that I foresee coming. And I just don't think small contractors have the capacity to defend themselves in court. And if they get a bad ruling in court, are they going to be out of business because they are non-compliant in the contract and aren't going to get their last 5 years? And then what happens to their bonding capacity after that? And so I don't think it's just the bonding capacity that small contractors are going to have a problem with. I think it's just the overall sophistication of understanding how to manage a project like this, understanding what the risk is for 10 years or longer on a project like this, understanding when the capital preventative maintenance needs to be met, because they're not experts at that stuff. They're experts on how they build a road, and so preventing further abuse to that road or maintaining that road is not something that they're familiar with. So I just think that there's a lot of variables that are out there that the general contracting community in Michigan aren't really experts at, that this would require them to be at immediately in the procurement process. They'd have to assume that they're experts already and then put in that risk in their bids.
Sure. And so, in your opinion, it's beyond bonding. It's a liability that is attached to it as well with this method. And I could see how that would be concerning. Obviously, we want more competition, not less. And so, that would be certainly something to keep in mind moving forward. I guess I'll turn it over to other members for questions. We'll start with Representative Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Biamini, you had mentioned you thought there was a place for this. There were specific applications. I believe you referenced it also. Can you elaborate on that? Where is this a good fit?
Yeah, so I know Representative Carra mentioned the I-75 project, and that isn't perfect. It wasn't 100% successful, but I will say when I first started at MIDA, there were Detroit news articles left and right suggesting that this would take 20 years to fix that road. we were able to put in a design, build, maintain, finance through probably the only contractor in the state that can do that, and was able to get that project done in 3 years rather than 20. And I think everyone in Metro Detroit is probably happy about that. So I do believe that there are situations in which this can, for very complex projects, and there are examples across the country where private public partnerships have already been utilized, which this is very similar to. Again, requiring this on everything we don't think is appropriate.
Anything to add on that, or that's just, okay? Very specific. Okay, thank you.
Representative Carra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for coming in to testify today, and Lance for all the conversations we've had over the past 5-6 years on this legislation. In terms of cost savings, and whether or not you guys think there'd be cost savings, we have seen our budget grow. Whether it was too low to start with or not, it had grown 10 or 15% each of the past 5-6 years. And then there was a proposal to have a 50% increase in funding for the roads. And then we settled that closer to a 30% increase after those recent 10 to 15% increases in the past 5 years. And to me, it just seems like a market process where government gives money, says to do a certain project, have warranties that are difficult to enforce, and then just do that on repeat but have more cash flowing would be very financially lucrative, and to not have that accountability on yourselves. To me, that's a business model, that's a dream for companies who don't get that opportunity of taxpayer funding for your model. So my question for you is, do you believe that you in the private sector are better at making market decisions than government, or do you think we should trust government to make market economic decisions?
In every, I don't think that's a blanket yes or no, quite honestly. I think in this regard, when you're talking about a public asset and managing that public asset, I think the collaboration between private industry and that owner of that public asset are probably the best way to manage that. As a contracting community, that's not our asset. And so while we have some liability to make market decisions, what if we're wrong and now we're drug into the legal process when we've made a market decision, but someone else decided that the preventative maintenance should have happened at year 8 or year 12, and we did it at year 15. I just think those variables the collaboration between public and private are good in that situation where, who ultimately holds that responsibility if there is a failure. While the liability in the contract is for the contractor, but it's still the public asset. It's still the public road.
Another question to Representative Wartz's conversation about the heavy vehicles. Wouldn't it be possible to have an insurance policy for a contracting company that says, hey, this is the limitation for the road. It was at this weight. Things changed in the contract that we had with, we'll say, MDOT. It said that this was the number for this 10 years. If something is to change and a big project were to go in, then we would recalibrate and dynamics would change. And they could have an insurance policy if there are too heavy of vehicles that were not supposed to be on the road. So I feel like the idea of insuring is something that would be productive for the companies to consider. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. Just like bonding, that's going to be a limitation on how much we can insure, and it will cost money. So it will just increase the cost of the project.
And when those things happen, when we don't have design, build, maintain, those are costs that the state of Michigan or local road agencies absorb when things like that happen anyway. So I kind of feel like it's a little bit unrelated to the conversation at hand, but thank you.
And I guess just one last question for me, if we could stick on the liability portion of the issue here, and maybe you guys touched on this, so I apologize if this is a little redundant, but my question is, as contractors, how would you assess that liability risk when you're responsible not only for building the road, but for maintaining it for a decade?
Yeah, certainly, and going back a little bit to Representative Carr's comment, yes, that is accurate, that we are insuring those costs when there is a failure. But if now you're going to insure against failures for every project, you've increased it across the board rather than the 1 or 2 times when you've had a failure. I also believe that, to Brett's point earlier, you aren't seeing media outlets that are suggesting, or even national watchdog suggesting that our pavements are failing in Michigan. We've had examples. We can certainly point to a few, and there's been a few that have been warranted, and the contractors have had to go in and replace whatever that they've warranted, and that has failed prematurely. But I certainly don't think, and the fact that Michigan contractors are also operating in other states, the pavement failures just aren't there. But I do believe assessing that liability and that risk, Mr. Chairman, actually will increase costs for every project across the board.
Sure, and I mean, naturally I would think it would, but, I guess to your point, with so many different variables, I mean, how do you even assess that risk? I mean, it just seems pretty complicated.
Won't be cheap.
Sure. I guess that's all I have for you guys. Members, do we have any other questions for the folks testifying? I guess one final question. What's better, asphalt or concrete? No, I'm just kidding. Thank you all for your testimony. I appreciate it. Do have one additional, we have one person wanting to testify, Ed Noyola from County Road Association. Ed, do you still want to testify? Sure.
I appreciate, Ed Noyola, County Road Association. I am the Chief Deputy Legislative Director. Just a quick comment. You guys have touched on pretty much everything that I needed to talk about, especially when it comes to liability and cost for the agencies. These are not going to be inexpensive type projects for sure. We're not generally geared up for those excessive costs, especially when it comes to doing the preliminary engineering analysis and looking at the bids themselves. Only a few of our road agencies have the capability of looking at what does a 10-year warranty look like, how much would it add to the cost, et cetera, et cetera. We also have to look at some of the implementation processes, the appeal resolution process, if there's a disagreement in the type of preventative maintenance or routine maintenance that's being done out there. And lastly, that leads me into the topic that you all haven't talked about, is the maintenance part of it. These are not inexpensive pieces of equipment. If you've if you've been on the road, you've passed a plow truck or a maintenance truck, they are very expensive pieces of equipment and not common to the private sector. The road agencies are the ones that do all the maintenance for their roads. They're the ones that have that very detailed, specific piece of equipment for that purpose, to plow snow, to fill potholes, to maintain the road bed, the road surface itself. So that's a thing that I don't know how many contractors have or could purchase that piece of equipment. Right now, it's a 2 to 3 year waiting list to get a truck replacement, and that's just the chassis. We're putting on all the other bits and pieces in order to make that a true maintenance vehicle. So that's a kind of a tricky little area that I don't know how the contractors would really actually do that. It seems like a really expensive capital investment for 10 years if it goes that long. The other thing that they touched on was traffic volumes. Traffic volumes could increase. Traffic weights could increase, or the use of the type of use on the roadway could increase. How do you deal with those sort of circumstances? And I appreciate the previous speakers talking about that a little bit. But and here's my last comment: 63 of the 83 counties do MDOT's maintenance. So are we going to have sort of a hodgepodge of who's maintaining the roadway when it comes to these warranty contracts on the maintenance end of the agreement? If we're going to do that, then maybe we should just turn it all back over to the department to do the maintenance. But that is going to be a very significant problem for us to try to work. Do we stop, pick up our blades and move on for 10 miles and then we drop our blades? Or do we do a workaround? How is this supposed to work? I think that's not a very effective way to do routine maintenance on our infrastructure or the state's infrastructure.
Sure. Those are all great points that you raised there. I guess I have just a brief series of questions for you. So given MDOT's failure to provide corrective action and timelines for warranties, and this is not coming from me, this is coming from the Auditor General's reports in the past, do you believe that additional accountability and oversight is needed in the current process?
I think that is being addressed through the research or through the inspection, the testing, the department's hands-on oversight We have the same type of criteria we generally use, what the department uses for these type of designs, and we will continue to do that. We will continue to do the testing and the monitoring and the oversight. That's just part of how we operate. That's how the road agencies have been operating, and I think they've been successful at it. I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Do you think there are some loopholes with payment and performance warranties currently?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But I'm not an engineer either.
Sure.
I play one on TV, though.
Very good one. That's all the questions that I have for you, Ed. Do we have any additional? Oh, Rep. Carra.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ed, for being here. Just want to clarify, County Road's official position is it neutral still?
No, we have not taken this through our normal internal process.
It's officially nothing.
Officially, I would recommend to our board that we oppose.
You would recommend
Yes.
Is that what you did 2 terms ago? Because we have the may language in there for the road agency.
And I appreciate that. Thank you. I should have recognized that you did do that, and I do appreciate that. But by the same token, we are still concerned about how we're going to do the maintenance with the state.
Sure. Well, and I appreciate you giving the number on the 63 out of 83 counties do the maintenance for MDOT. I had not heard that number before, so thanks for sharing that today. I think it's very safe to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but through this bill, the contract could have it to where you subcontract with the local road agency to do those maintenance efforts. It's not like they have to go out and buy a snowplow. That contract can be built in a way that the road agency is the ones doing the maintenance in that circumstance. Is that correct?
They could, but does that mean that's an extra cost to the department rather than going directly to us to do their maintenance? They're going to have their maintenance costs on their contract, and they're going to pass it on, or are they going to use our dollar rate?
If there's a contract between MDOT and a company to build a road, and then the road subcontracts with the local road agency to do the maintenance, to me that's a very productive way to have some private sector involvement in this process instead of just trusting government at the state level to work with government at the local level and make wise and prudent decisions. I don't think anybody up here is going to buy the concept that we think that a company who's going to build the road is going to go out and buy their own snowplow, which seemed to be kind of the direction it was starting to imply towards the committee. And I just want to make sure that we're a little bit more clear in terms of this process. The local road agency can be subcontracted to maintain these roads.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And thank you for that clarification, Rep. Do we? Oh, you do. Rep. Prisby, go ahead.
Thanks for your testimony. There's several counties that, when they replace bridges, they don't have the ability to do their own design and build. They're already doing design build, but they're probably not doing design build maintain, as far as I know. Or are you aware of any counties that are doing that, especially in the bridge section or road building?
I'm not aware of any.
Yeah, I'm aware
I know
of
that
design build.
the design build. We do have. There's language in the Michigan Transportation Fund, but it has a cap of a project. The project has to be over 10 million, 20 million. I'm not really 100% sure of that one.
Okay. Would you be supportive of? Never mind. I'll figure out a better question.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for Ed? Well, seeing none, appreciate your testimony. I'm going to read in a couple of cards.
Thank you.
Not wishing to speak. Is this neutral on the bill or opposing the bill? Matt Albach from MDOT. Not wishing to speak, opposing the bill. Troy Hagan, ACEC. Not wishing to speak, opposing the bill. Doug Needham from Michigan Aggregates Association. That's it for today's hearing. We're not going to vote these out today. This is pretty complex stuff. We want to make sure we do our due diligence, so we'll continue the conversation here. But with that, Vice Chair Alexander moves to excuse absent members. There being no objection, the motion prevails. There being no further business before the committee stands adjourned.